in Washington, D.C. And with something like this, it was very important to wait a couple days because things, you'll hear things. You gotta let things settle. You gotta let things shake out. And one interesting piece of the puzzle here, which I think is most interesting in that it is being reported by USA Today and other mainstream news in this fifth generational warfare that we're in. Certainly, this would have, in previous eras, this would have had to, go years online, being put into the codexes, the conspiracy codexes, the conspiracy, underground for many years until nothing happened about it in general at all. But USA Today reporting, on December 1st, this was Monday, National Guard shooting suspect served in bloody CIA-led Zero units. The Afghan man accused of shooting 2 National Guard soldiers blocks from the White House last week served with CIA-backed Zero units in Afghanistan, paramilitary groups that carried out secret raids against suspected terrorists and U.S. enemies as part of the CIA's counterterrorism program. Ramanullah Lakanwal, the 29-year-old who allegedly shot the 2 West Virginia National Guardsmen in front of the metro station in downtown Washington, served in the elite tactical units, according to Sami Sadat, the former commanding general of the Afghan Army's Special Operations Corps. The group worked with U.S. forces on counterterrorism operations before the Taliban takeover. I think it's important to note here that all of this comes from one source. It comes from the word of the former commanding general of the Afghan Army's Special Operations Corps, i.e. another CIA asset. So we have one CIA asset claiming that this fellow was a CIA asset. Not to say I necessarily doubt it, but number one, why is one CIA asset giving up another CIA asset, putting that into the narrative, and not only online, but into the straight up as mainstream media as you could possibly be mainstream media, USA Today. So whether or not he was actually there, we obviously they want us to think that he was and put the pieces together. But this actually gets even more interesting. A motive in the shooting has not been revealed, but reports that he served in the ultra-secret violent units that critics compared with death squads for their human rights abuses have spurred questions of whether his experiences left him with post-traumatic stress disorder. So
that's the question. The question is, That's the question is, did he have PTSD? Not like, hey, maybe this was, a little bit more of an operative.
You needed more lithium. You needed to put him on more drugs. Or perhaps he was on the drugs, is the real question here. Of course, they don't pose it that way, but just another interesting detail. Okay, if he was part of death squads, and they'll get into how he was brought here, I think in 2020 or something during the Biden sort of Afghan refugee program. But was he suffering from PTSD, and what sort of drugs was he on? I don't know. We don't know. But even the way that they talk about this isn't like, oh, he served our country and we let him down, right? Or he was one of the good Afghans, and I don't know. So, he should have had more mental health care. They're straight up, like, that's how they have presented these types of things in the past, that he was this sort of heroic figure. So we should really give him the benefit of the doubt or something. But no, in this case, they're just like, yeah, he was on an ultra secret violent death squad in Afghanistan. And maybe he had mental health problems. In the wake of the shooting, the Trump administration pointed the finger at the Biden-era immigration policies and refugee program that brought thousands of Afghans who served with the U.S. military into the country after the 2021 withdrawal from Afghanistan. Lakhanwal entered the country that year through one such program, Operation Allies Welcome, which brought nearly 200,000 Afghans into the country. And the insinuation here, although they don't necessarily spell it outright, is during this program, Operation Allies Welcome, they were bringing all sorts of Afghans who helped the U.S. in Afghanistan over the 20 years that we are there. And could there be, I don't know, more members of the death squads running around the country? If, there's bound to be at least one other one within the 200,000 Afghans. Lakhanwal served with elite U.S.-backed teams. As always, I mean, this is just like a fun, repeat of history here. The blowback from CIA-funded programs coming back to bite us is coincidentally the exact thing that happened in 9/11. Sadat said Lakhanwal was among thousands of Afghans who served in the elite tactical units. The units he served was called NSU, National Strike Unit 03, or the Kandahar Strike Group, according to Sadat. Sadat now chairs.
Hey, hold up. You cannot mention Kandahar and just skip over it like we don't know, Basil.
Okay.
Do you not? The Kandahar Giants. The Kandahar Giants made popular by L.A. Marzulli, although the story, at least in our circles, we had known about the story prior from people like Steve Quayle, who had interviewed some people in the military who were doing stuff over there in the Middle East in the early 2000s, claim that they captured a giant red-haired giant, like literal giant. And it's known now as the Kandahar Giant. So, if you don't know these things, you're going to skip over that and be like, oh yeah, whatever, it's just some group in the Middle East again. But for us, it's like, wait a minute, there might be more here,
And of course, we know some of the more interesting things the CIA and the U.S. government was doing in Afghanistan and Iraq at the time was looking for, stargates or the Tomb of Gilgamesh. Thank you.
They found the Tomb of Gilgamesh, according to the BBC. We don't know what happened since then. It's been about 20-something years. But yeah, there was I think it was a BBC article that you can still pull up that says Tomb of Gilgamesh found. I'll try to pull it up.
Right. And of course, the searching for the Tomb of Gilgamesh showing up in Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails that became so famous. The CIA confirmed that Lakhanwal served under it in Afghanistan, but declined to comment on what role he played or reports of its human rights abuses. There's a nice picture of him there. When the Taliban took over after the end of the 20-year U.S. occupation of Afghanistan, the United States welcomed Afghans who fought alongside Americans as they feared reprisals from the new regime. In the wake of and then it goes into some comments by the Trump administration. The first Zero units were formed months after September 11th, 2001. Interesting detail. It was kind of this turnkey insurgency that apparently we had planned at the time, because it takes years.
Ready to go.
Yeah, it takes ready years to put that kind of stuff together, but apparently the CIA had already lined up these kill squads or whatever.
It's like having little jabs ready in case of a pandemic, everybody, just in case.
Exactly. Yeah. Usually takes 10 years to put together a kill squad.
Did it in 6 months.
At their height in late 2010 and 2011, an average of 19 raids were carried out nightly in Afghanistan, according to the Open Society Foundation report.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Okay, Soros has his eye on the CIA death squads in Afghanistan.
Of course he does. Of course he does.
Guided by CIA intelligence and accompanied by U.S. Special Operations personnel, the Zero units conducted tactical night raids against suspected terrorists and Taliban militants. So they kind of repeat over and over about how, oh no, they were Afghans doing Afghan stuff, and yes, the CIA helped them. Oh no, it turns out they're special operations personnel on the ground with the death squads, of course. Quote, these units were very highly trained and did some of the most heavy fighting throughout the war. Mick Mulroy, a former CIA paramilitary operations officer and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, told USA Today, quote, a whole generation of CIA and military officers served alongside them, embedded with them, and many owe their life to members of this unit. Mulroy added, they were the first to be stood up and the last to leave Afghanistan. Sadat said the units were among. So you have here the heroizing of these units. Again, it's not, oh, he's a CIA asset and so it's really sketchy. It's no, he was a war hero and the PTSD got to him, and etc.
Sure.
Sadat said the units were among the most effective in combating the Taliban on the ground. The majority came to the United States right after the 2021 withdrawal, since they faced extreme danger of being hunted down and killed by the Taliban, who hold a special hatred for the Zero units, Sadat said. Oh boy.
Beautiful narrative being laid out here.
And it goes on. It goes on and on. But the very interesting bit here is, at least in the context of the fifth generation sort of battlefield, it's okay, yes, he was the result of a sketchy, dark site CIA death squad paramilitary. And okay, conspiracy theorists, you got us there. It's no big deal. He obviously was having some mental health problems. And yes, he was a trained killer. And yes, he did, but he was a hero. We couldn't have lost the war in Afghanistan if it weren't for our hero. I mean, come on. What are we supposed to do?
That's too much of a macro view. These individuals that were there, talk to them. They owe their lives to these units who were killing and kidnapping people and stuff.
Yeah, it's true. Just to end with, let's see here, a couple. I'm going to go to the last two paragraphs. Gossman said people complained to local officials, but investigations were stonewalled and shut down. People were left with no answers, and the United States never took accountability for the dangerous culture of impunity that accompanied these operations. They're talking about in Afghanistan after the war, and creating these death squads, thousands of men trained, and the crazy thing, or maybe not crazy, but the thing to remember is that was a 20-year war. So a whole generation basically raised by the CIA to be killing machines, and then came Biden's pullout, et cetera, and we brought these. I mean, you talk about bring up a child in the way they should go. Talk about MK Ultra. Talk about all these things. A 20-year war, a full generation, like from some of these in some, I would say, extra mainstream reading about these units. Some of these units, they started training kids at like 10 years old to be part of it.
It's all about the children. It's all about getting them young. I think that's the theme for today's episode, by the way.
29 years old. He was 29 years old in death squads that are 20 years old. The guy was 9 or 10, potentially, he was 9 or 10 years old by the time the CIA came in and started training him. Says, quote, it's the utter lack of transparency that is most concerning, she said. There was no sense that there needed to be accountability for those actions, meaning the actions of the death squads, but not necessarily about the individuals in the death squads. It was about the CIA, who brought up children as young as 10 to be killing machines and then imported them to the United States. So you don't even need a conspiracy theory here. It's this very interesting new phase of the fifth generation warfare that we live in, because pretty immediately after this came out and people started digging into it, you would see this kind of stuff flowing on the X feed, and a sane rational, patient person should wait a couple days before the X feed crazies to go off and we can kind of shake out what's going on. And whether or not all of this is necessarily true to the most verifiable degree, it is the narrative sourced from other CIA assets. So whether or not this is true or not, it is a sort of word of mouth narrative given by the head CIA asset in this case to sort of tell this story and give the impression that there's potentially thousands more of these children raised to kill by the CIA who are living amongst us in the US here. So really playing in well to the sort of recent increase in sort of fear the Islamic people on American soil type of thing. Very effective.
Yeah, I have the story just for reference here. This is the BBC, published April 29th, 2003. Gilgamesh tomb believed to be found. Archaeologists in Iraq believe they may have found the lost tomb of King Gilgamesh, the subject of the oldest book in history. And we have not heard much since then. But the Giant of Kandahar story, again, is a fascinating one because it is a story of a military group that found the body of the giant and there was some drama concerning it. I don't remember all the specifics, but there were, I believe it was dead, but it was huge and they had to cover it up and the whole thing. So what's actually going on in the Middle East? Who knows? And all this stuff with the national, I mean, obviously this is a tragic murder and stuff, but if we start asking who benefits, like what's the purpose here? It does feel like because USA Today is carrying it, and USA Today is considered mainstream news, mainstream media outlet. This thing reads more like, and not exactly, but more like an alt media type of take or something, or a truth seeker type of take where you're digging into CIA connected stuff. Obviously, you can still see a little bit of the propaganda there of like not painting all the military operations from that era as negative or terrible. It was more like, some people in the UN and whatever, they think there was some human rights violations. But yeah, how can you not have? You can't do war without being accused of human rights violations, But I think the greater, not necessarily what's happening per se at a tick by tack basis, but it feels like a lot of the old legacy scams from intelligence, like that era is over. So mainstream can expose some of that stuff without too much of an issue because the operations that are being carried out now are different. You know what I mean? Like there's a new protocol or like a new method to scamming the world basically in different.
Yeah, well, and it's not contexts. I think we shouldn't be overlooked that we are right on the precipice of a very similar U.S. operation in Venezuela right now.
Right.
Invasion, potential occupation for at least very similar reasons on the back end, and being sort of confronted with basically the exact same repercussions of a very similar situation, as not necessarily the narrative of like a 9/11 narrative terrorist thing, but the drug, the whole thing with Maduro, the drug trafficking, etc. Something that doesn't quite seem to match what Trump voters were thinking when they said, yay, no more wars, no more regime change. And Trump's like, okay, I'll end 8 wars, I'll end the 9th, and then we're going to do our American duty and take over Venezuela because drugs. What? That's what? Okay.
There's always got to be something. Always got to be something going on. You can't have nothing going on. The tax money will stop rolling in.
Announcement. Sorry, everybody. I forgot to press send on the text message before the show. So if you're just tuning in now, yeah, I forgot. But I just sent it out. People are getting it. So thank you. You're here. Sorry you missed the first story, but you can go back and listen to it. Go do that. Not now, but after the show. You're going to love it.
Well, first off, that was the whole thing was supposed to be a false flag story.
This is false.
So there you go.